Deidre, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Let me just adjust my screen so I'm looking at my camera. How's that? Better?
Right. Yep.
Um, well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. We only have 30 minutes, so I want to kind of jump in. You and I talk a lot, so there's a million topics I could cover. And by the way, one of the things I want to say, I was just thinking about this. A lot of people assume that being an investor is all about investing and then giving guidance to people. And one of the fun parts about my job is I learn a lot from you. Over the last few years, there are some moments where and I'm going to get to why one of the things we're going to talk about today, but like when you sent me that text last week, I was like, man, that is really insightful and something that I've then been talking about with a bunch of my other companies. So one of the most fun parts about our job is just getting to invest with amazing people like you and then learning from you. Obviously, hopefully that's a two-way conversation, but maybe for folks that don't know you, just quick background on you and how you got to where you are and a little bit about Workboard, and then we'll jump in.
Yep. So Workboard's my third startup. I have been at this have an idea, grow a business thing for a long time. The genesis for Workboard itself actually came from my experience after IBM bought my last company. And I was trying to lead with the same kind of mission alignment, metric alignment that inside IBM that I'd led inside my startup. And it was just phenomenally difficult. And there's, more layers, there's more geographies. And you and I both know if we don't have everybody mission aligned and clear on the metrics, the needles we're trying to move now, the needles don't move very fast, right? And so I just found it just brutally difficult to have that kind of momentum and alignment in big org, and had the giant aha moment that was a software problem, right? Yeah. That you could do that by having a software that was purpose built for getting everybody aligned on results, getting transparency, staying connected to the purpose and the mission. So that brings us.
And that idea had kind of been around though. What caused you to feel like, concept of OKRs and alignment, and a lot of people were using BI and spreadsheets, but what caused you? Because I think a lot of people, and probably a lot of investors that you met with along the way, tons that I know well, didn't saw it as a crowded sort of legacy market that really didn't have opportunity for innovation. What gave you the conviction and the drive to say, no, fuck it, I'm going to go build something really compelling in this space? Because we'll get to that. You have game over. This is an amazing company.
I think, first, I think it's genetics, right? I was born at, fuck you, I see it, you'll get it later. I'm fine with that. Just mindset, right? Like, I don't need you to get it now, right?
I love that.
I think the thing that the opportunity we saw, right, is there at the time when we started the company, OKRs were like a teeny tiny fringe thing happening in like 3 companies in Silicon Valley. And they were like largely irrelevant to the rest of the world. In big enterprise is an annual plan with this forced march of alignment that was so hard, so heavy, you'd only do it once a year. And then this endless cycle of monthly business reviews, ops reviews, quarterly business reviews, which
nightmare.
Like half the time that you spend at work is in this sort of, I think, horrific process of getting aligned and driving accountability. And at this core is, what are we aligned on and where are we now? And that actually, my epiphany was for big companies is the reason you move so slow is you plan annually and you don't have anybody aligned on the plan. That's why you're so slow. And if you think about startups they're iterating at a super high cadence. And I just thought that notion of iterating on what the strategic priorities are on super high cadence needed to move to enterprise so they could have both scale and speed. And in order for that to work, that alignment had to be embedded in the operating rhythm. And people are talking about OKRs as individual employee goals in which you give people pay and comp. That's not how I think the issue, or what I think the opportunity is. It's, we aligned on a set of results. Where are we now? I want to make a good decision today about where I spend my time. And that's like the operating and run the business model, not the look at it twice a year and decide whether you're going to praise or raise or punish. Those are different processes, right?
And I remember you telling me that the first time we met, and having been an operator and a founder and a CEO, and I think you said something along the lines of hey, why would you do an annual plan and update it quarterly? Wouldn't you want, as a CEO, wouldn't you want to know kind of in real time, how every business, every product, every division is operating, like be able to sort of drill in and say, hey, how are we doing this month? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. As a CEO, it just makes sense.
Yeah. It's not, I think for people who are in that chair, it's not a hard thought, right? For people who've never been in that chair, or worse, people who've never been in enterprise, like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a problem to me. Like, cool, I'll be back later.
Right.
It's okay. It doesn't sound like a problem.
I do like, by the way, I think that's a superpower of yours as an entrepreneur to sort of say, I don't need you to get it. I'm good. I'm going to go do my thing. And eventually you'll see what I see. I think that is a superpower of a lot of great entrepreneurs.
Yeah. That and tenacity, right? Like pain tolerance and tenacity.
Yeah. Pain tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are big ones.
You texted me a week ago and said, hey, one of the big challenges I'm seeing in the market is, and it just struck me as so real because it's kind of been a lot of our investing thesis and my personal investing thesis for a while now, chaos around us, right? Which you could argue had been going on for 4 years. But really with COVID, we kicked into like this crazy once in a millennium pandemic that people had never experienced, and they were thrown into work from home, and their, health is at risk. They're not going into the office. Like it's a massive shift in people's lives. And I think you said something along the lines of people are still in that mode. Mm-hmm. And yet, as we head into 2021, the business is rocking and rolling, and we have the greatest opportunity we've ever had in front of us. And so that disconnect, and by the way, I think a lot of companies are feeling that, right? We're in the greatest tech bull market we've ever been in terms of technology adoption, but people are still coming home. Their relatives are sick. They're worried about getting the vaccine. I mean, talk a little bit about, you sent me that text, what triggered it, and how have you been dealing with it at Workboard, and what are you seeing the best companies you work with do?
Yeah. So in the fourth quarter of last year, I started, it was really easy in conversations that I was having with other leaders, both at startup and growth companies and also super large companies, is they're really aware of the fatigue, kind of the teams run down, worn down. And I started looking forward to that and thinking, okay, we're actually through the worst, and we know how the story ends. We don't know what day it ends, but we do know how the story ends, right? And so then I started thinking, you got to make sure that you do in Q4, you do the right things to make sure you have energy for urgency in 21, right? You can't get everybody to operate with urgency unless they have enough energy left to do
right.
That,
Such
right?
A great point.
And so I started thinking about that, started writing about that a bit more. And then for our own company, that meant I kind of laid out how are we going to launch 21, and we rewrote the script on how you launch. And so instead of having a 21 kickoff, January 4th, all hands, we had a 2020 goodbye party. And we're really going to put that thing to bed.
Oh, I love that.
Like, it's behind us. We're saying goodbye, right? And there were a bunch of stuff involved in that. But it was all play, 100%, the whole all hands, which was like 6 hours, 100% about laugh, connect, put it behind us. And
I need to do that with my kids.
It helped.
I felt, it's funny. I felt a little bit like yesterday was a little bit of that. I'm kind of tearing up. The inauguration.
Yeah.
For my kids was like a defining moment where they're like, we're putting that behind us.
Yeah, 100%. So part of that goodbye party was the funnest was we broke it out into groups. We sent everybody champagne and musical instrument, and then they wrote their farewell 2020 song. So there was like 8 breakouts. Each one of them wrote their own lyrics, and then they performed their song. And we came back together and
okay, I'm going to steal this idea. I love this idea.
It was so fun. The lyrics were so good. And the boldness of like making Zoom music together on lyrics you just wrote with kazoo and ukuleles was so good. It was, anyway, the laughter was like its own therapy, right? And then, okay, it's gone. And we sent it out with a laugh. And then we moved the following week into what we call OKR week, right? Which is we kick off with the purpose and everybody aligns OKRs. But even then, and this is why I sent you the text, even then, even though it was, okay, it's gone, we have a huge growth year in front of us. Hey, by the way, we had a huge growth last year, but you were in your bunker and you didn't notice. We have a huge growth year in front of us. But even then, I felt like people were still operating with a safety mindset.
Yeah.
And I needed them to shift into acceleration mindset, right? And that was what prompted it. Like the safety mindset was so deep and so kind of existential for so much of that year, you're not even aware how much you're still living in safety
Yeah.
and protection, right?
Yeah.
And that's not growth, right? That's sameness, right?
It's funny. I'm on a nonprofit board here in the Bay Area, and we had a board meeting yesterday afternoon, and I don't know, 20 people in the room, or, not in the room, but on Zoom. And we were talking about the budget for the year. And we have a major event we put on in September every year. And should we do it? Should we not do it? What, blah, blah, blah. And one of the people who's on the board raised his hand and said, hey, I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight in the way I'm thinking about things. He runs this business. It's got a golf course and a restaurant and a meeting facility. He said, I'm fully booked from July on. Mm-hmm. And everybody said, aren't you worried about the pandemic and the vaccine? And he said, guys, I don't have an option. I've got to be full throttle. I'm sure there will be issues that I'm going to have to deal with. I might have to deal with cancellations, but I had to get my head around as a business owner and with my team, we're out of the mode of being scared and worried, and we'll deal with all the stuff that comes along with trying to be open, but we've got to go. Yeah. I just thought it was really interesting because you literally had everybody else in the room was like, well, if he's going, then we should be going.
Let's go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, we have at Workboard, right? We have a huge growth opportunity and a tailwind and lots of goodness, right? And so there's also duality of my situation doesn't suck, right? And lots of people's situation does suck. And I think that for me, that's okay. I'm going to compartmentalize and then helping my team do that, right? Helping them, literally what I posted this morning, like choose optimism.
I saw that. Yeah.
Active choice. Just choose it. It's the easiest choice, actually. Better way to live. Lean into that, right? And
100%.
Draft. People can draft behind you on your own optimism, right? And just lean forward into that.
And I think sometimes confuse optimism with not being empathetic to the challenges of the people around you. And so maybe that's a good thing to cover as well. You did a lot of extraordinary things last year with the team, for the team. So it's not like you're just like, hey, I'm optimistic, and by the way, I'm oblivious to all the things happening around me. Talk about some of the things you guys did from a people and cultural standpoint that helped your team get through, a really, I mean, Q2 was like, the business is rock and rolling right now, but Q2 was like, was rough.
Yeah, exactly right. So when we headed into Q2, none of us, not a one of us on this planet knew whether it was a V, a W, an L, or a U, right? No clue. And so you kind of have to make a set of decisions like, how are we going to operate, right? And so we're going to operate like it's a U, and I have no idea how the base of the U is, right? And so you shift everybody from where we were before. Was actually the number one mantra was, you're not hiring fast enough. That was Q1. Q2 is, you can't hire anybody. It was just a complete reversal. And the next was fear was super high. So we literally have sent people flowers every single week of 2020, right? Just bring a little bit of brightness in, just tiniest thing. It's like so simple. And it had a really crazy impact actually on people over the course, right? Which is a little bit of kindness every single week, or what we call moments of joy. We had graduation for.
I just want to capture that though. So you literally sent flowers to people's home every single week.
Every single week. Every single week. Yep.
I'm guessing not a lot of companies did that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know how it's so ridiculously easy that it's just, and it's so simple, right? And what happened, unintended consequence, everybody in the house, which included like more people than your office, right? The partners, the kids, whatever, that dividend actually was for everybody. The number of other people in the house that got connected with what now we call the village was awesome because of those flowers. We had graduation ceremonies. So we had kids graduating from kindergarten, every grade, and people graduating from grad school. We had one grad ceremony. We sent gifts, packs, diplomas, whole company attended the ceremony. It was awesome. We changed the label to like, this is a village. And the village includes all those people creeping in and out of our Zoom calls, and just bring them into the mix for it. We increased our mental health support and resources. We obviously did several stipends for make your life and your world comfortable, like make sure that you're in a comfortable place and location. A whole bunch of just surrounding things where safety, comfort, connection, and compassion, like on a constant drumbeat, right? And it was a super hard year for me personally, like on so many levels above and beyond the pandemic stuff.
I know.
And still choose
And
optimism.
so how do you, I think a lot of that is experience, right? I've been in tech for a long time. You've been in tech for a long time. And so I think younger founders struggle with, they're dealing with their own things. And then and I remember this as a 27-year-old founder coming in, everybody's looking at me like, hey, what are we going to do? And I was kind of making it up as I went along. How did you help some of your younger team members who at some level are making it up as they go along? They're learning, they're managing, they're leading for the first time. How did you transfer your kind of knowledge? Because by the way, like, just for folks who don't know, I mean, you guys grew 100%, business is cranking, like you're running one of the most valuable private software companies on the planet. There's a lot of reasons for you to be stressed. You mentioned a lot of stuff going on personally. How did you then compartmentalize that or translate that to helping your team be successful in their roles? Because I think that's something that a lot of younger founder and CEOs struggle with.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit sort of just I think a bit of the wiring. So in a crisis mode, right? I'm just not the person who runs screaming from the room, right? I'm the person who says, it's okay. All right, get in a line. Hang on to the person in front of you, the person back of you. We got this, right? Yeah. All year long, that's just kind of where I lived. And that meant just a steady, and up the communication really, really high. Hosted walking, ask me anything. It's like, okay, guys, let's move together. We got this. Let's just like ventilate a little bit of that energy that's driving you nuts, especially in Q2. Was just a steady tone around it, right? And really demonstrable, consistent optimism, not denial, not that. Like, this sucks, you guys, shitty week for sure. So much uncertainty, and still we've got this.
Yeah.
Here's what we've got. Here's what we work from. And the first thing we work from is all these people in this village with you, part of your network. You're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And then raising the beat on that in Q3 and Q4, we're more than okay.
Right.
We're more than okay. And then the goodbye 2020 is we are so much more than okay. We had a ridiculously good year as a business, right? No matter how hard it felt, we crushed it and consolidated our position, right? And that now the challenge is, okay, you guys, we are okay. It's no longer we're going to be. We are okay. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Right. And that is hard.
And now you guys are into that next phase, which is we see this quite a bit in our world, where now it's about helping people see the mountaintop and understanding what that journey is going to look like. And it never gets easier, right? You become $1 billion company, then a $2 billion company, 5, and I tell people like, hey, even our $50 billion companies, guess what? They have the same stress, the same issues, the same challenges. And so how are you, by the way, I love the idea of goodbye 2020. We got to do that as a firm. I'm going to write that down. How are you helping people, many of whom probably are seeing scale for the first time? So you have a combination of new leaders you're bringing in who've seen scale, folks that are coming along, experiencing for the first time. You're in hyper growth mode. How are you thinking about it? Maybe translate it into a little bit of how you manage the company. Because I love, I'll toot your own horn. I love the way you run a board meeting, which is you don't create a PowerPoint deck. You literally log into Workboard.
Yep.
And it's so powerful. I mean, I have companies that literally create 30, 40 page slide decks for board meetings. And you're walking in, you're logging into Workboard. Here's how we're doing division by division. Here's the key topics we want to talk about. How are you helping people set those aggressive goals and objectives as you head into 21 and even 22, but also make it, realistic and feel realistic, given that we did just come out of a really challenging year?
Yeah, I think a couple of things there. So we live on Workboard for sure, right? We have a really ritualized quarterly, what are we trying to achieve now? What's true outside? What's true inside? Where are we going to go? Every team is aligned. And then we kick off every quarter with all hands, where each team shares, hey, here's what we learned last quarter. Here's what we're excited about. These are the results we're trying to drive this quarter. Here's why. And so everybody hears everyone else's why. And we start with super high context. Those sessions are so energizing, right? When you hear and see ambition from every team around you, it's a raise up for everybody. it also has this huge transparency impact, right? And then everyone knows where to go find that. It's in Workboard all the time. And so just starting every quarter aligned on what we're trying to achieve is actually giant juice. It's no mystery what our purpose is right now. It's no mystery the value we're creating. It's like radical clarity on the value we're trying to create. The what's interesting when you talk about how do you get people who haven't seen scale and people who have, what's super interesting, we had this conversation with the extended leadership team this week, where my job right now is push everybody for more and faster. And last year it was like steady, calm, we got it. This is more. And so, people are like, okay, I don't know if I have more. Like, you do. I can see that you do. Let's go.
Yeah.
This young person on the team it was actually the more experienced operators that are thinking they got to use a playbook for slightly slower growth than we're experiencing. And they're working that playbook. And they got a little more loose, so maybe they're a little bit more whatever. This young person, she's been with us for a long time. She's like,
I know who you're talking about.
I don't have a playbook. And so I just look at it and say, okay, how big can it be? And let's do that.
Right.
And that her mindset is, I don't have any idea what the limits are, so I don't assume there are any. And so she sees a more unfettered path, and it's very clear thinking. It's liberating. So I'm trying to go both ways. Scale playbooks from the guys who run scale playbooks, and unfettered, unconstrained thinking from those that haven't seen a rule book and think you have to follow it.
Yeah.
And it's really a nice combo because they one juices the other, right? They're amplifiers of each other.
What's your advice on, I love that scenario. And one of the stories I always tell is I was on a board with Gary Reiner, who was the former CIO of General Electric, and he's now a partner at General Atlantic. And we were on the board of this company and Chris Barbin's company, Aperio, which and this is, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And they came in and said, hey, our goal for this year on this one metric is 8%. We want to move 8% of our operation into this mode. And Gary said, when I was at GE, it was 52%. And they were like, okay, so what? He goes, make the goal 30%. And the team was like, that's crazy. We could never get to 30%. And Gary said, make the goal 30 and see what happens. And at the end of the year, they came in and I think they hit 18. And Gary's like, well, thank fucking God we didn't make the goal 8.
Exactly.
Right. So how do you, because a lot of folks don't like that mode because they feel like they failed.
No, I think
that balance between aggressive goals and yeah, this is a constant conundrum for private companies.
And for all companies, actually.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, like the Workboard, we sell a platform and then we sell a playbook around it. We call that playbook outcome mindset method. And the outcome mindset is we start with, okay, what outcomes we're trying to create? And then the next question is, okay, well, what would be awesome? Let's define what awesome is. Let's rally for awesome. Let's prioritize for awesome and see how close we can get. And then next quarter, we're going to be way higher on the mountain than we would if we aimed for predictable, right? Or we aim for the most probable outcome. And I think your most probable and your best possible are never even close to each other, right? And aim here.
Right.
And then reward people who reach. And then I think the next thing is you reward learning, not success fail. Okay, what'd you learn when you aim for great? Well, I learned that we have nowhere near enough capacity and we're a bit delusional. Cool, let's fix that. Or I learned that I was aiming at the wrong thing. That's not actually what great is. Great's over there. And now I know, so I can aim in the right direction next quarter. Like literally you're learning way faster if you're organized around great. You asked a question about earlier, like how do you, when you want an ambitious agenda, how do you get people?
Yeah. And I think it also ties into sometimes people's fear of OKRs. Like I don't want to set too aggressive goals and to be measured to them. Yeah. If I say 11 and I only do 9, am I going to get punished? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, like we have this whole coaching program, right? Which is, there's 2 kinds of coaching. It gives what I think of as people permission for ambition. And if you're not giving permission for ambition to everybody in your company, you're fucking up flat out. It's that straight.
Right.
If you're telling them, nope, no ambition. We won't have ambition here. We'll have predictability. You're going to get predictability, but I promise you it's going to come at the cost of mediocrity.
And you'll never get greatness. Yeah.
That's what predictability is, right? You get my most mediocre answer, you get my safety number. But I don't want your safety number, I want your ambition, right? So for teams, we teach them really permission for ambition. For leaders, we coach them in a very different way. And part of that is we don't use the word OKRs much in that coaching. It's like, what do you really need? You need a culture of ambition. You never were aligned on results, and you need them to focus on those. In other words, stop doing the dumb shit, start doing the things that really drive your best possible outcomes. Leader, you're guardian of that, but it's your job to create a culture of ambition, not a culture of compliance.
Yeah. And how do you, I guess the question that I get asked from some, particularly younger founder CEOs is, how do I deal with, okay, the plan was aggressive and we didn't hit it?
Yeah. Then the next question is, what did we learn?
Exactly.
Where was the friction? Is it capacity? Is it our own internal process? Is the market not what we think? And I just bake in the idea that we don't know everything. This is a giant duh for people, but we don't know everything. And everything, including the things we don't know, is changing all the time. Like the delusion that you have perfect predictability, especially when you're trying to do a longer range plan, it's just
yeah.
Plans are directional. They're not actually like giving precise directions, right?
I do think one of the most important things investors, board members, CEOs can do is say to the team in that moment, I remember this in Q2 of last year, hey guys, the thesis is intact. Right. Like I remember I had the conversation with another CEO, a very active, aggressive CEO who's in his 30s in March of last year. And he called me, he said, I'm really frustrated. We just raised a big round of financing at a high price. And he said, I feel like we're not going to hit that plan. And by the way, I led the round. Right. And I was like, dude, it doesn't fucking matter. Like the long-term thesis on your company is 100% intact. In fact, it probably just got better. Focus on that. Yeah. Do the right things in the near term to adjust and tactically deal with what's going on. But let's, tell your team, by the way, hey, long-term thesis intact. We've got to figure out how to deal with the battle. But like the mountain we're still trying to climb hasn't changed one bit.
That's right. Yeah. I think hopefully all learned that being fluid about what the course is, right? Like the mission itself remains, right? How we're getting up the mountain, that changes. And I think having short-term clarity right now is so much more valuable than the idea that you have some kind of precisional clarity on long range, right? It's leave that aside. And in particular, if you'd taken kind of the mindset you entered October 1 with, if you brought that into Jan 1, you're moving too slow.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
One question I love to ask CEOs is, how do you think about work and life balance? And we all feel like we're not doing it well. So let me just, take the pressure off. But how do you think about that? Because
I don't have any. I'm the worst person to ask this question. I work all the minutes of the day, except for the minutes where I'm exercising or eating, and I don't like to eat that much. I really don't care about it. So I'm just a terrible person to ask. I love what we're doing. I love this mission and this opportunity, and I literally do it all the time. 5 a.m. Saturday, like I got ideas. I
know we talk on the weekends.
I'm just not balances. I would say this, what I think about balancing is I need to balance the duress and the joy, which I don't think means my work and my life. Like you get duress and joy from both, right? From all kinds of things. And those things need to be, my opinion, in balance with each other. And fundamentally because they relate to your health as an entrepreneur athlete. And so very utilitarian in that sense, like you eat food before you go for a long ride or you bonk. It's kind of like that. You keep those in balance so that you'll be healthy for the race. But having said that, huge privilege on my part, I'm married to my co-founder. And so we have complete alignment on the work-life balance thing. And we don't have one person saying, seriously, you seriously gonna do that again?
Right.
You just sat down. It's like, it's 8. Like, what do you mean you got another Zoom call? Like we both are like, oh, what time's your next Zoom call? Okay, cool. I'll do mine at 8 too. Right. Yeah. It's way more like that. And that's actually super liberating, particularly when you're having fun. Right.
Yeah. It's funny though, in the investor world, there's a lot of people who fear backing husband and wife founders. And I had a great experience with Mike and Cass Lazaro at Buddy Media. We backed Audie and Alon at House, you and Dariush. Like if you get it right, there's a symbiotic scenario that works out great. And it's fun to watch you guys do it well. So
I don't know a lot of other CEO founders who are married who don't have a lot of tension in their home life because the baby one is competing with spouse and n number of other babies, and that's not fun, right? We've each been in different situations where I was CEO somewhere and he was a CTO somewhere, and the pull was real, particularly because my job involved travel all the time, and you don't get to say, oh, you know what, I'm too busy, I can't deal with that issue. You're like, that's not your choice. And so I actually think the alignment is actually pretty helpful. Mm-hmm. And nobody really talks about, my wife's so mad at me, she hasn't talked to me in N months because whatever, right? Like, but that's a real deal. That's a real deal. Not our real deal, which is actually, for me as a woman CEO in particular, it's super liberating.
Hey, can we spend a minute? I know it's only booked 30 minutes. Do you have another minute? I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
What you are one of the few female CEOs in enterprise software in Silicon Valley. What's that like? Mm-hmm. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are some of the things that you've had to break through to get to where you are? Because
it's
obvious question.
Yeah. I can't tell you what the pros and the cons are because I can only have this. I'm only this. I don't have an option to be something else.
Right.
But I would tell you that there's an extraordinary amount of shit. It's unbelievable. And I might be a slight scorekeeper where I have a small list of, maybe a long list of I'll be back later. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Because it's the level of shit is just, it's stunning. It would shock you, right? And that's, and I'm not a let me tweet about it person, but it's non-trivial for sure. And having said that, I grew up with 3 brothers and we're all super close in age, and it was lots of sports, fight, play all the time, and you either had to hit hardest or run fastest, and so there's a whole other part of it. It's like, okay, I can do a decent shot at both hitting hard and running fast, and it will be fine. Yeah. So there's some preparation for that. I think a lot of, and I've been a woman CEO in enterprise startups for a long time, and the only one for a really long time. But what I hear common among a bunch of them is this sort of grow up with brothers thing, which is just like rough and tumble play, and like you roll with the shit. It's like,
yeah.
You have the same amount of shit I do. It's just different flavor than mine, but it's just, to me, I don't have a victimhood thing about that. I do have a commitment though to what I think of as the Underground Railroad. So pipelining really smart, capable young women up and through a stage of their career, free from harassment and crap at work, free from that, like zero intimation, zero nuance, zero shit that is pervasive, and enablement and a platform to be fully equal on the merits in their jobs. And I feel like that's a pipeline where I can like help them bypass the first role they might have in their 20s that can fuck with them forever in the wrong companies, in the wrong teams, and in the wrong dynamics.
Well, as you know, this is something I'm passionate about. I have 3 daughters, and I want them to feel like they've got every opportunity that my son has. And, one of the things we've been doing, obviously worked with you. You were one of the first people to raise your hand as part of our board diversity project. And I'm thrilled we were able to bring Margot and Kathy onto the board. That's one area where I feel like I can influence and create some change. But I think anything we can do to make it easier and more accessible to have female leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, the better. So I'm thrilled that you're a shining star that everybody can look at. And I'd love to see you not be the old, hey, you're a female CEO. It's like, yeah, I'm just a fucking CEO. Like at some point I'd love to get there. Yeah. Right. But we have work to do. So
we're closer, right? We're actually moving now. I think 5 years ago we were like stalled out, but the efforts like yours with All Raise and women on the board, and my experience with you entirely, right? The entire program was, I actually never felt like my gender was a nuance in your decision to invest in the company. And when I was raising the B, what you led, that nuance existed.
Yeah.
Right, in other firms. And I think the first one is we're just free from that as a factor in decision making on what bets we're going to make, which people we're going to bet on. I think you're a great example and a great lead in that arena, in that domain.
Well, thank you. Well, hey, this has been great. I could spend hours with you. Like I said at the beginning, I always learn a ton from you, and I appreciate you sharing with others, because I think one of our jobs as leaders, you're a CEO and me as an investor, is to share with other people, help them. If there's a 30-year-old founder CEO that watches this and learns a couple things, we've done our job. So thank you for spending the time. I appreciate it.
Awesome. It was fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Deidre. Take care.
Bye-bye.